This is Window Youth.
Very good afternoon to you all. I am Mario.
I'm Eva.
And we are members of the Youth Board of Refugee Week Greece. We thank very much Action Synergy for facilitating us here today, for the hospitality.
Today we're going to talk about climate justice and diversity, equality and human rights. How those two are related to each other. And in general, what are the issues that we're going to cover.
Yeah, and how these two topics are interconnected. So I suppose you have some questions for me?
Yeah, I have some questions for you.
To start with?
Great. What does the term climate justice mean to you?
Well, climate justice, it is a term that's been arising the past years, quite recently, I would say. A very complex term as well. And what it basically means, climate justice, it's, as the term would suggest, the basis of driving our society into as a new era of being able to adapt to the climate crisis in a way that ensures that each being on this planet has a place in this so-called green future, sustainable future, and that it ensures that this climate crisis is actually the combat against this climate crisis begins bottom up, and of course that also it's the same about the solutions that are produced bottom up as well, and in a way that protects the most vulnerable communities in our society, and well, for instance, youth, women, these categories that are most vulnerable to climate change for a number of reasons, which are going to talk about, I'm sure.
Great. In your opinion, what is your difference between climate change and climate justice?
Well, what these two terms actually mean. The climate change is a phenomenon. Okay, climate justice I would characterize as a way to deal with this phenomenon. Climate change, we somewhat know that it is a phenomenon which these last decades, actually that these two last centuries has evolved as something that it is a man-made crisis. And in my opinion, the effective way to deal with this is implementing policies and good practices that rest under the term of this umbrella term of climate justice. So these are two different sort of things, but of course very, very much connected.
Great. So, which social groups do you think are most affected by the climate crisis, and why?
As I mentioned one of the previous questions, we have all sorts of vulnerable categories of people in our society. Firstly, that would be the youth, women, the indigenous people, and if you would ask me why, as you did, why they are considered to be much more affected, it's because of the platforms that they have to be able to express their opinions on the matter and actually take decisions and act on them. For instance, youth, and that's also the same for women and indigenous people, they don't get the same opportunities as... let me give you what I consider an excellent example of that. In November 2024, I was at Baku, Azerbaijan, where the 29th Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change took place, which is is characterized as the top event, let's say, for the international climate policy. Most of the people that actually participated in the national delegations were, well, old men. So I believe you get where I'm getting this.
Yeah.
Both youth and the other two vulnerable categories that I mentioned lack the opportunities to actually influence the policy that's being created and implemented regarding climate change. And personally, because I am a young person, what I would say regarding myself is that I feel much more affected and vulnerable, because some people much more older than me and, well, of a particular gender, as I said, mostly old men, make decisions about me without me, about the future that concerns myself, and mostly old people that, well, quite possibly by 2050 won't be with us anymore, if you get what I mean. And I mentioned 2050 because it is a key year by which we must have implemented net zero policies across the board. So, yeah.
About human rights, we see that they are in crisis since the dawn of man. How does climate change impact human rights, such as the right of health, water?
Thank you very much for asking me this question. The thing is that very basic human right actually is being affected, which is, of course, right to safe home, the right to health, the right to food, for instance, but ultimately the right of life itself. And I think that can be a great example of why this is real. It would be a recent judicial revelation that we saw in Switzerland with Klima Señorinas, which was a group of 65 plus ladies which actually made a petition to a court in Switzerland saying that the Swiss government doesn't take seriously the matter of climate change and doesn't actually take into account their vulnerability and their human right to life, which is ultimately very much affected by climate change. And they won, of course, because when you have a crisis, which of course is being called crisis, I would say that it is an existential crisis. So when you have such an existential crisis which threatens different sorts of ecosystems, the biodiversity, the way you live, and of course your right to health, with each summer getting even hotter and hotter, with extreme weather conditions that also affects your right to life, as you mentioned, the right to health, and it's very interlinked, and without doubt why it's obvious that this crisis actually is also a human rights crisis as well, and something that we're going to witness in the long term.
Alright, let's talk about environmental policies for a moment. Why do you think it is important to incorporate social justice into environmental policies?
Where do I think it's important to incorporate social justice in environmental policies? Because you can move on with policies that are not inclusive, and with policies that, well, very much so, can't be effective because only adapt to the realities of very few peoples. They are policies that usually put the blame on citizens and their lifestyles that basically the market has created, so to say, and we sometimes forget all this. Climate justice policies, it's not just a nice word to bring to the conversation just for the pomp and pageantry of it all. It is a crucial thing to take into account, especially when you have billionaires flying their private jets around the world and being the plain citizen that gets to work with public transportation that has to pay basically the bill of this crisis. It is the case as well when you have big oil corporations drilling through sea and soil to just export some minerals or a form of energy it's not sustainable in the long term. And of course, who's going to pay for all this? The average citizen, not the billionaires, not this category of people that usually are able to lobby in order to create these climate policies, because they're not inclusive climate policies and therefore they cannot be effective. And if you'll allow me, I would like to also make a note about what is youth's place in all of this and why it is very important to bring climate justice and youth into the conversation, because when you take youth into account, you make sure that the policies that are being created today are future-proof and will survive actually in the long term, because in fact they align with our idea of the future. So it is very important.
So about last November, you said you went to Baku and you saw indigenous people as well. Have you ever felt, or do you know someone who has felt personally affected by environmental changes?
I think I sort of have answered this question in a way, and I brought the example of youth. And this is also the example I'm going to bring back to the conversation, because it's something that I felt personally, and therefore I think I'm able to comment on that. And as I said, I really felt when I went to United Nations climate conference, I really felt in a way unable to do anything of real importance for both for the world but for my country as well. Greece is a country very much affected by climate change. It's a Mediterranean. It's a country situated in the northeastern Europe, situated in the Mediterranean. Very hot summers every year, getting hotter and hotter each year. Of course, many other phenomena, and of course, climate injustice is also something that its people have to cope with without any significant initiatives from the responsible authorities. So what I felt in this conference of the parties, it wasn't just being unable to influence. I also realized that it was also impossible to act upon these policies that had been created without my generation's consent, because actually it didn't align at all with the way me and my generation see this idea of durable and sustainable future being implemented.
So, despite these conditions we're living, in what ways can governments, civil society organizations and citizens help promote climate justice? For example, through specific actions or initiatives?
That's a very nice question, and I very much thank you for this question, because it gives me the opportunity to put some things into place. So you mentioned three categories: governments, civil society organizations, NGOs, and the everyday citizens. Let's take firstly the role of citizens. Citizens, of course, they're the ones that have to demand for change to be actually made, to be implemented, to begin sort of climate justice, let's say, revolution. And we also have a very much powerful tool, which is our lifestyle, the way that we exist within the market. And by changing some aspects of our lifestyle so that we make our lifestyle more sustainable, it's something that also, in a way, helps the market so that itself, it changes and that it will be able to meet our demand. we have the power through our lifestyle to change our demands regarding sustainability, regarding social responsibility from corporations, regarding companies that, for instance, big oil corporations that need to switch their business into sustainable solar and wind energy, or for instance for companies that sell toxic fabrics to turn it into more sustainable one with second-hand clothes and fabrics and so vegan clothes. It's a long list to mention of how in each part of the industries we can change a lot of things when we make ourselves changes collectively. Of course, it's not the one citizen that's going to make the effects, but when we collectively actually change our lifestyles into more sustainable manner, we can achieve a great many things. But still, the citizen, if he's not given the floor through consultations and through direct democracy means, still the citizen doesn't have so much power to influence the decision makers. Now let's take the second category, which is, let's say, the civil society organizations, the NGOs. I happen to work at an NGO, and let me relate it, and it's topics that my organization works on. It's actually about this kind of topic. The thing with NGOs is that, especially when you don't have so much funding, you need to fight with big interests, with big corporations, and many times with people that are not quite much informed about the situation. And of course, that's why raising awareness is a very big part of our job, to have people that can understand this topic. Someone might say that, okay, it's very scientific things, and climate change, I don't know about that. But still, NGOs that work on this kind of topic, it's very important that they continue their work with actions and raise awareness on these topics and actually expose all these harmful policies that are being adopted, or not always harmful in a way that they want to achieve a harmful result, but policies that are not effective and will result to nothing, to zero. But still, the NGOs have the power to actually, through institutional ways, to influence policy. And then it takes us to government, which is the most crucial in this equation. So for society to function well, we need a state and a government that also understands the danger and acts in a way to protect its citizens from things that are going to happen. For this reason, it's quite important to regulate and introduce measures that are very much centered at the problem and not let me give you an example. When you have big corporations that are drilling, for instance, the Mediterranean, let's say, and this of course destroys marine biodiversity and also produces much carbon dioxide, and the government says, okay, to balance it, we're going to plant some trees. This is not a logical, the way I see it is not a logical way to think. This is a kind of dangerous game to play, and that's why I said we need logical policies that actually are certain to the problem. For instance, and that would be banning mining, banning drilling, banning all these sort of practices that have brought us to the edge of this crisis. And then, of course, it takes boldness from the government, which actually is the one that has to take the responsibility, because it's voted by the people to actually do that. It takes the boldness, and sometimes you can't always take into account the political cost, because of course there are going to be political costs if you implement policies that perhaps are not friendly to corporations that have interest in having drilling policies and fast fashion policies in place. it's really important for governments to realize the responsibility that is entrusted and the power that is entrusted to them by the people, and that the fact that they work for the people to produce these inclusive policies.
So I guess you have seen many things about climate crisis and climate justice, how the world sees and acts on this topic. Do you have some good examples of good practices or social movements that you believe support climate justice?
Well, you mentioned two concepts, good practices and social movements. So I'm thinking about giving you an example of for both. An example for a social movement that would be Fridays for Future. We all know Greta and the inspiring figure that she is for many regarding my generation, the Gen Z, because she really is a very inspiring figure. And actually what she started, which was basically just a small strike each Friday, from skipping school to protest against climate change outside local authorities' buildings. It's something that went, of course, viral and was able to inspire protests and movements throughout Europe. And I think it is at that moment that climate change was taken to another level in the way we think about this problem and the role that youth has to play in all of this. So that is something that I really wanted to mention about social movements. About good practices, a very nice good practice is energy communities, which brings to the table two key issues that are interlinked directly with climate change, which is energy and sustainable communities. And of course, in the center of all this, the citizens themselves. Energy communities, let me just tell you briefly what it is so that you can understand the example I'm making of. Energy communities is basically a citizens association which receives, after being recognized, it receives some funds from government or European funds as well to actually produce energy with its own means. And when I mean its own means, it means either from solar panels that they install in their lands or it's mostly solar panels. Most of the energy communities, for instance, that exist in Greece, they use solar panels and take advantage of the energy that these solar panels produce, and they share, actually through this cooperation, they share this cheaply produced energy, and sustainably, of course. It's green energy, it's clean energy, and this is an example that helps reinforce the meaning of community, which is very crucial, and it places the citizen at the center of the problem and gives them the opportunity to actually make a change themselves about how their local community as a collectivity exists and lives. And it's a very nice example that reinforces also democracy at the local level, and the way that we call this energy democracy, which is actually also very, very important to take into account in this situation.
Right, and last but not least, about global policies. We have seen many of them, many have failed us, and they keep coming.
Yeah.
If you could change one global policy related to climate or justice, what could it be?
If I could change a policy, well, if I could change one policy, that would be the need to have, when it comes to formulating climate policies, the need to have always a win-win situation, to be able to get out of or something out of this, because it's not possible. We need to understand that we need to make sacrifices. So the policies that I would, I use plural because it's not, I can't think just one policy to change. Firstly, I would say that we need to change the economic policy related to the climate crisis. We need more funds for ensuring inclusivity regarding underrepresented minorities and underrepresented categories within these negotiations and these tackling this phenomenon. And we need also lots of fundings, trillions in fact, for supporting countries, developing countries that are also much more vulnerable to climate change, countries of the global south as well. So that will be one policy. Another policy that I think is worth mentioning, that I would like to also point out and that I would like to change, would be the way that we bargain, because yes, it's about bargaining. It would be, I would like to talk about the right that under the United Nations Convention for Climate Change and the Kyoto Protocol, the rights that countries have to trade actually how much carbon dioxide they can emit, which is, if you think about it, it's crazy. Talk about increasing or decreasing emissions within a system that is created by countries that actually don't want to have anything to do with balancing our emissions and any of that. And to think that countries are actually trading how much they emit, it's crazy to think about it, when the actual thing that we need to do and to center our focus and our attention is to actually implement policies that reach us to zero emissions, to net zero. So I think that's a policy, for instance, trading emission rights, that is headed to a wrong direction. It exists some decades now, but I really think that it's making a mockery of this situation and the importance of tackling the climate crisis. So yeah, that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.